Well, thank you all very much for coming out this morning. I know last night was a rough night for many of you, but thanks very much for coming out. What I want to do is to talk a little bit about what politics is about and what it is not about. Now, when you turn on the TV for the last year, you've been hearing enormous amounts of information about how terrible Trump is, how terrible Clinton is. And in fact, the vast majority of the coverage on television looks at this election as if it were a high school presidential election for the senior class. It's a personality contest. Who do you like better? How's Hillary's hair today? What about Mr. Trump's hair? So let me start off by giving you the very radical view that politics really is not about Hillary Clinton. It's not about Donald Trump. It's not about Bill Clinton. It's not about Mr. Trump's wife or family. Do you know what politics is about? It's about you. It's about you. It's about the middle class of this country. It's about working people. It's about poor people. It's about elderly people. It's about whether the climate in this planet, we're going to be able to reverse climate change so that your children and grandchildren will be living in a healthy and habitable planet. That is what this campaign is about, and it is imperative, despite all the stuff you see on the media, to stay focused on the real issues and to figure out where we are today, how did we get to where we are, and where do we want to go, and which candidate is most likely to take us where we want to go. All right? Where we are today is a hell of a lot better than where we were 8 years ago before President Obama took office. Now, Republicans don't talk about it because they suffer from a very serious illness called amnesia. And they want us to forget about where we were 8 years ago. But many of us remember, and 8 years ago, just at this time, we were losing 800,000 jobs a month. That is an incomprehensible number, the largest number of job loss since the Great Depression. 8 years ago today, we were running up a $1.4 trillion deficit, the largest deficit in the history of the United States. 8 years ago today, the world's financial system was on the verge of collapse. And people were legitimately worried that if they put their credit card into an ATM machine, nothing would come out. That's where we were 8 years ago. Any objective observer will tell you that we are much better off today than we were 8 years ago. Thank you, President Obama. And he had to do that against an unprecedented level of Republican obstructionism. And I know about that because I'm in the Senate, and I can see it every day. But the issue that we also have to deal with is not just that we're better off today than we were 8 years ago, which is true. There is another issue that we have to deal with, and many Democrats don't deal with it. And that is the fact that for the last 40 years, before many of you were born, under Democratic and Republican administrations, what we have seen in this country is a shrinking of the American middle class. That's a fact. And what we have seen today is 43 million people living in poverty, some in extreme poverty, some who don't know how they're going to pay the electric bill, some who don't know how they're going to feed their children in America today. And over that last 40 years, we have also seen another phenomenon. Middle class shrinking, millions living in poverty, but there is another reality, and you are going to have to help me and those of us in Congress to address that reality. And that is the wealthiest people in this country are doing unbelievably well, and large multinational corporations are enjoying record-breaking profits. Middle class shrinking, millions living in dire poverty, the very, very rich getting richer, large corporations enjoying huge profits. That is where we are today. And what our job together is to create an economy that works for all Americans, not just the billionaire class. And what we have to understand, and I wish I could tell you differently, but the truth is that the people on top, in almost every case, not every case, are incredibly greedy. You would think that if you had $5 billion, you might say, well, that's enough, I'm doing pretty good. But those very same people, the billionaires, do you know what they're doing literally today? I am in touch with progressive candidates all across this country. And we get phone calls, we get emails from all of them, and they're saying, Bernie, the Koch brothers and other billionaires are pouring millions and millions of dollars into our campaigns. Just came back from Ohio, just came back from Wisconsin, where I was yesterday, with Russ Feingold's running for the United States Senate there. They are pouring $7 million just in the last week into Wisconsin. So you got a situation here where this country is moving toward an oligarchic form of society. The people here understand what I mean by oligarchy? Oligarchy is a nation in which a small number of very wealthy families control the economic and political life of this country. And people look around, they say, well, that's happening all over the world. Guess what? That is exactly what is happening in the United States of America. And as a result of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, what billionaires are now trying to do is to buy the United States Congress. And that is why Hillary Clinton believes, and I believe, and the vast majority of the American people believe, we have got to overturn this awful Citizens United Supreme Court decision. I'm here this morning for two reasons. Number one, I'm asking you to work as hard as you possibly can in the next 5 days to see that Secretary Clinton becomes our president and that Donald Trump is defeated. And then I am also asking you on the day after the election to understand that politics is not just about Election Day. Politics is about building a movement of millions of people, and I suspect that movement will be heavily influenced by the younger generation who have a new vision for America. Now, if we get away from personality, Secretary Clinton's personality, Mr. Trump's personality, let's look at the issues. Issue number one, if Citizens United is a terrible Supreme Court decision undermining American democracy and allowing billionaires to buy election, which candidate has said, and I'm kind of giving you the answer here, which candidate has said that she will not nominate any person to the Supreme Court unless that person is clear about voting against Citizens United? That she is Hillary Clinton. And the he who wants to continue Citizens United by appointing another conservative to the Supreme Court is Donald Trump. So on the most maybe important issue that we face, because campaign finance impacts every other issue, Hillary Clinton is far and away the superior candidate. And by the way, on this issue of billionaires buying elections, don't think it is just progressives or Democrats who feel strongly about it. Overwhelming majority of the American people, Republicans, conservatives, also understand that when people put their lives on the line and died to defend democracy, we are not going to allow the Koch brothers and a handful of billionaires create an oligarchy in this country. And then when we talk about, it's not just the candidates, it's about the political parties. Mr. Trump is a Republican, Secretary Clinton is a Democrat. Which political party out there, all over this country, in this state and all over this country, is trying to suppress the vote, make it harder for poor people and old people and young people and people of color to vote? And I'll tell you something, I have run for office a whole lot in the state of Vermont. It has never occurred to me, not for 1 second. We know what parts of the state are sympathetic to me and what parts of the state are not. But it has never occurred to me for 1 second to say, you know what, we may lose over in that area. Let's figure out a way we can keep people from voting. If you don't have the guts to run for office based on your ideas, if you think that the only way you can win an election is to deny people the right to vote, I say to those Republican governors, get out of politics and get another job. So you got an entire political party, the Republican Party, which is defending Citizens United, wants to even go further than Citizens United and allowing billionaires to buy candidates, who are working actively to deny millions of people the right to vote. And I think that's a very clear reason why we should vote against Mr. Trump and for Secretary Clinton. But let's talk about economic issues. Right now, at the federal level, the minimum wage in this country is what? Anyone know what the federal minimum wage is? $7.25 an hour. Does anybody here think that any human being in Ohio or America can live on $7.25 an hour? $8 an hour, $10 an hour, can't be done. All right, you can do the arithmetic as well as I do. I believe, and Secretary Clinton believes, that we have got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. I believe $15 an hour. I do not want to see, I'll tell you a story. I was in Ohio last year, and I talked to a guy who works for a church, and he was at a farmer's market, and his job was to collect the food that wasn't sold at the farmer's market and take it to an emergency food shelf. And I asked him, how many people who go to that food shelf are actually working? He said 90% of the people. All over this country, you got people who are working 40, 50 hours a week. They are not earning enough money to feed their families. All right, that has got to change. That's why we're going to raise the minimum wage. And that's what Hillary Clinton believes. That's what I believe. That is not what Donald Trump believes. So I say to my friends here in Ohio, who are hurting economically, but are thinking of voting for Mr. Trump, you ask yourselves, how does it happen that a multi-billionaire doesn't think we should raise the minimum wage to a living wage? Now, there's another issue out there tied to the minimum wage, and that is Secretary Clinton understands, and I understand, that in the year 2016, it continues to be embarrassing that women in America earn 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Now, I don't think it is a radical demand to say that if a woman does the same work as a man, she's paid equally. What's so hard to understand about that? And I know that every man here will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity for women. One of the things that I am asking of the American people is to think big, not small. To envisage, to go beyond what you see on TV or what you hear on Congress. in Congress, because essentially what the establishment wants from you is to think in tiny little ways, not to ask why not, why can't we move here? Let me give you just one of many examples. There is one nation in the entire industrialized world that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. You are living in that country. Secretary Clinton believes that we should have 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave. I believe it. The vast majority of the American people believe it, and that's what we're going to do. Now, you know what that means? This is what it means. It means that in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in France, in Germany, when a woman has a baby, she is able to stay home with her baby, and often the husband as well, the father as well, for month after month in order to get to know the baby, love the baby, nurture the baby. Here in Ohio and in Vermont, women give birth and they have to go back to work. They have to separate themselves from their babies after 1 week or 2 weeks because they don't have enough money to stay home. That is not a family value. That is the opposite of a family value. And together, we're going to have paid family and medical leave. Secretary Clinton and I, and many of you understand, that unless we have a strong trade union movement in this country, unless workers are able to negotiate contracts and have a union at their back, we're not going to have a strong middle class. And as one of the strongest pro-union members of the United States Congress, one of the strongest union supporters, what Secretary Clinton understands and what I understand is we need to change the law to make it easier for workers to join a union and to negotiate a first contract. Right now, there are millions of workers out there who want to join a union. They're unable to do so by illegal actions of their employer, and that will change. That's what Secretary Clinton's view is. That is not what Donald Trump's view is. There's another issue out there. We have made progress in lowering unemployment under President Obama, but let's be honest, real unemployment remains much too high. If you add people who don't have any jobs with people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time, know any people working part-time when they want to work full-time? A lot of people out there, people who have given up looking for work in high unemployment areas. Real unemployment is over 9%. What Secretary Clinton knows and what I know is we need a major jobs program at the federal level to put Americans back to work at decent wages. We should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. Right now, embarrassingly, our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, water systems, wastewater plants are crumbling all over America. Investing in our infrastructure, and Secretary Clinton has a very specific plan to do that, investing in our infrastructure will create millions of decent-paying jobs. Secretary Clinton has that plan, and that's another good reason to support her. Think big, not small. How many major countries are there in the world that do not guarantee health care to all of their people? Anyone know? Which country is it? Right. Many people don't know it. Media doesn't talk about it. That's another issue we got to deal with. But right now, there is one major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. In Canada, every man, woman, and child has good quality health care as a right, and they spend far less per capita on health care than we do. Go to UK, everybody has health care. France, everybody, Germany, all over the world, Scandinavia. We are the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people. Secretary Clinton believes that we should move in the direction of guaranteeing health care to all people. She wants to double funding for community health centers so that people all over this country will have access to primary health care. You know what Donald Trump's solution to the health care crisis is? Throw 20 million people off of health care. That is unacceptable. Our job and your job have got to fight for health care being a right of all people, not a privilege. At the end of the campaign, primary nominating process, Secretary Clinton and I sat down for a while, and we tried to figure out ways that we can work together. And one area that we decided we could work together was in higher education. Everybody in this room knows that we will not succeed as a nation unless we have the best educated workforce in the world. And you know what? 30 years ago, we did. 30 years ago in America, we had a higher percentage of our people graduating college than any other country on earth. You know what? Ain't the case today. And that gap between us and many other countries is growing wider. 40 years ago in Ohio or in Vermont, if you had a high school degree, the likelihood was that you could go out and get yourself a decent paying job. That world has changed. The global economy has changed, technology has changed, education has changed. 40 years ago, when we talked about public education, it was good enough to say that we'll provide free public education for kids from first grade through high school. Today, when we talk about public education, Secretary Clinton agrees, what we have got to be talking about is making public colleges and universities tuition-free for the middle class. And that means life becomes a lot easier for those who are in college, but in addition, growing up in a family where my parents never went to college, I want every kid in America to know that regardless of his or her income, the income of their families, if they study hard and they do well in school, yes, they are going to be able to get a college education. How many people in this room are dealing or will be dealing with student debt? Raise your hand. Whoa. What kind of interest rates are you paying? Anyone know? How much? 9? No, you're not paying 26. God, no, I hope you're not paying 26. 11%. Okay. If you were to go out and buy a new car today, what kind of interest rates would you pay on it? 0 or 1%. She's paying 11% interest rates on her student debt. What Secretary Clinton and I believe is that you and everybody else in America who has student debt should be able to refinance your loans at the lowest interest rates that you can find. And in addition to that, there is a federal program that probably very few people here have heard of. It's called the National Health Service Corps. Anybody heard of that? One, okay. And what the National Health Service Corps is about, it says this: if you're going to medical school or dental school or nursing school or some graduate school in healthcare, and you are prepared to serve in a medically underserved area, poor area, the federal government will forgive your debts, your college debts, okay? I think that is an idea that should be expanded. Do we have anybody here who's studying to be a teacher? Studying to go into childcare, to law enforcement, to other public services? We should be forgiving the debt of those people who are prepared to serve their fellow Americans. And one way now, sometimes people say, well, Bernie, these are great ideas, but they're expensive. Well, they are expensive, it's true. How are you going to pay for them? Well, I'll tell you how we're going to pay for them. We're going to tell Donald Trump and his billionaire friends that they're going to start paying their fair share of taxes. It is, I've been spending a lot of my life telling the American people how fraudulent the tax system is, how it gives all kinds of benefits to the wealthy and large corporations. Then in one day, Donald Trump did more to make that case than I've done in a year and a half. He came before the American people and he said, I, Donald Trump, am a multi-billionaire. I've got mansions all over the world. I live in the lap of luxury. And I don't have to pay any federal income tax because working families and the middle class are paying those taxes. So we got some bad news for the Donald, and that is on November 8th. Not only is he going to lose this election, but he's going to start, he and his friends are on the path to start paying their fair share of taxes. Now, I'm at a university here, so I'm going to tell you something really, really radical. You ready to hear something really radical? Okay. If you promise not to tell anybody. Hillary Clinton believes in science. Shh, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Get her in trouble. She actually believes that we should develop public policy based on scientific evidence. I know. Sometimes you got to go out on the limb. What the heck? Now, we laugh about that, but that's how absurd politics is in the year 2016. I am a member of the United States Senate Committee on the Environment, and in that capacity, I have talked to scientists all over the world. And the scientific community now is virtually unanimous. The debate is over. Climate change is real. It is caused by human activity. It is already doing devastating harm in our country and throughout this world. Secretary Clinton has some very specific ideas about how we can transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Donald Trump's view on climate change, and I say this to you seriously, I wish I was just kidding, but I'm not. He believes that climate change is a hoax emanating from China. Now, why he thought it was from China and not from Mexico or a Muslim country, I don't know. But he did kind of think it was from China. So this is not a laughing issue. Because what the scientists tell us is if we do not radically transform our energy system as soon as possible, what we are going to see is more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, rising sea levels, more international conflict, as people around the world fight for limited natural resources like water or land to grow their crops. We have got to transform our energy system. And I think the choice between Clinton and Trump is very clear on this issue. One candidate has a plan, one candidate thinks climate change is a hoax. Last point that I want to make, and that is I have conservative friends and I disagree with them on many issues, but I trust them and I like them. It's a democracy, we have different ideas. But one of the ways that Trump has gotten me very upset and very angry is the following. Everybody in this room knows that if you studied American history for 5 minutes, you know the rocky road that we have traveled in terms of trying to end racism and discrimination of all forms. You know that before this country became a country, when the first settlers came here, what they did to the Native American people was terrible, and what we continue to do to the Native American people remains terrible. I don't have to explain to anybody in this room what slavery was about. I don't have to explain to anybody in this room that 100 years ago, not such a long time ago, and the children don't know this, women in America did not have the right to vote, did not have the right to get the jobs or the education they wanted all of 100 years ago. But what America has been about, whether it is civil rights, whether it is women's rights, whether it is gay rights, have been millions of people coming together to stand up for justice and to take on discrimination. And what has upset me the most about Trump is not just his tax breaks for billionaires, his stupidity regarding climate change or his other policies. What has bothered me the most is that he has made the cornerstone of his campaign for president bigotry, trying to divide us up. The truth is that if we went around this room and people said where their parents or grandparents or great-great-grandparents came from, we would find people come from all over the world. That is uniquely American. Our diversity is our strength. And we cannot allow Trump, and by the way, people don't know this. You know, people say, oh, well, look, I'm really appalled by what he says about Muslims or what he says about Latinos and Mexicans. Please remember that before he was a presidential candidate, he was a leader of the so-called birther movement. You know what the birther movement was? The birther movement was a racist effort trying to undermine the legitimacy of the first African-American president in this country's history. That's what it was. So, let me conclude by thanking you all for coming out. We got 5 days in this campaign. Let's do everything that we can to get votes for Secretary Clinton, and the day after the election, get involved, help us transform this country. Thank you.